Oh, hell yeah, they do.
Any game can be dropped. But, guys, we've got to talk about the biggest winners from week 4, all of week 4. You guys already know we're here every single Monday. Not every single Monday, but most Mondays we can be here to recap the college football weekend. I'm here, as always, with PG and Jay. Guys, let the people know where they can find all your great stuff.
Yeah, you all know where you can find me. If you haven't watched me already, You Got Problems, the PG show on Apple, Google, Spotify, or here on the YouTubes.
Yeah, you know me, Jay Unfair Sports. For some reason, Ty threw away my toothbrush, and we'll discuss that off screen.
That's on me. That full.
What up, Blood?
Blood's in here. Thank you, Blood. Seth's in here. Guys, we got a lot to talk about, but one thing I did want to kind of start off with is just doing a general recap from this weekend. I kind of want to go around and each pick a game and each have us briefly talk about what stood out. And I'm going to go with one that's a little bit obvious here, and it's the Notre Dame-Ohio State game, right? And it's because Notre Dame messed up my opportunity at a perfect weekend on my picks on Bleacher Report this weekend. And it was off of some just head-scratching stuff. First and foremost, guys, mainly the entirety of that game was phenomenal. Jay and I were texting each other back and forth through that game and a different game. And the one thing I kept telling Jay is I love these sort of ugly, just bully ball games where it's just a slugfest. Scoring isn't high, but pads are popping. People are getting buried. Defense is showing up. And that's what you had through a lot of that Notre Dame game. And it was awesome. But I really want to focus on the final few drives of this game because I think that tells the story of the game, right? You had a defensive game, and then you got to the fourth quarter and specifically the final few minutes. Gentlemen, I was elated whenever Notre Dame got the stop and Ohio State punted to them and they had 4 minutes left. I'm sitting there looking at Notre Dame, looking at my wife, thinking I am going to pull off the perfect weekend because Notre Dame has 4 minutes on the clock. Estime hasn't had a huge game. The Notre Dame running game hasn't had a huge game, but you got 4 minutes. Everybody talks about a 2-minute drill where you got to score. Well, there's an opposite thing too, right? Crane and Company were talking about this, and it's a fantastic point where you've got to be able to play keep away if you got the ball with 4 minutes left. And they didn't do that. They gave it back to Ohio State. Ohio State goes down and scores. And the most head-scratching thing was the final few plays of this game. First and foremost, how Ohio State got the ball on the one. Emeka Egbuka. PGJ, I promise you this. I'm not saying that I wouldn't have had Marvin Harrison Jr. or Emeka Egbuka make a play, but I would have told my defense anybody but Emeka Egbuka and Marvin Harrison Jr. because Marvin Harrison Jr. is always a threat, and Egbuka had ate them up all game.
Yep.
Anybody but those two, right? Anybody but. Well, it was Egbuka. And then we get into the final 2 plays of the game. Notre Dame loses because they have – well, I'm not going to say they lose because they have that because who knows even if they had 11 men on the field if they would have stopped Ohio State. I'm not going to – but it certainly doesn't help when you have 10 men, and where Ohio State ran the ball to get the touchdown is where the defensive lineman was not for Notre Dame. Great win for Ryan Day because there's a lot of people asking questions about Ohio State, and this is where I want to open up the general conversation to all of you before I pass it to your game, PG, and your game, Jay. I do want to have a little bit of a general conversation about this game. Ryan Day went at Lou Holtz after the game. And look, it is what it is. But to me, that wasn't about Lou Holtz so much as it is Ryan Day has heard the noise of college football, right? That wasn't as big of Lou Holtz. Ryan Day has heard the chatter of a lot of people thinking he might not be the guy at Ohio State. Now, I have pushed back. Jay and I have had this conversation here, PG. We've all had this conversation here. I think Ryan Day is fine with Ohio State, but there are a lot of people that think he's just having the benefit of a really loaded team. I think it was far more about that than it was about just specifically Lou Holtz. What do y'all think?
Go ahead, PG.
No, I mean, I still don't think Ryan Day is the dude to get it done out at Ohio State.
See, is it fair enough?
I like, honestly, I like Brian Hartline. Brian Hartline is the guy that recruits the majority of those guys to that team, especially on the offensive side of the ball. You've got a Jim Knowles who's orchestrating that defense. And let's be honest, ever since he's left Oklahoma State, that program's been in shambles. I think if you had a Brian Hartline and Jim Knowles combination out there at Ohio State, it's a better all-around coaching duo than you have with Ryan Day out there. I mean, just being honest, I don't think Ryan Day's the dude to get it done at Ohio State.
Fair, Jay.
He hasn't won the big game yet.
And I'm opposite of that. I think Ryan Day can get it done. He's had some unfortunate circumstances that have made him lose. Right now, Jim Harbaugh, it took him 8 years to finally figure it out and get things going at Michigan. And right now, Michigan is a power. They are a power. They play a game. They literally built their roster to beat Ohio State. And luckily for them, that gets them to the playoffs, wins Big Ten games. And maybe at some point, they'll figure out that J.J. McCarthy needs to throw the ball more so they can win a playoff game too. But we'll get past that. I don't think that Ryan Day is fully the problem. I think that Ryan Day has a lot of things that he needs to figure out. But at the same time, like you mentioned, Ty, Lou Holtz goes on national television and basically calls the man soft. Like, that's not something that you just overlook. As a man, you don't. That's pretty, disrespectful in all capacities. You called me soft. You called my team soft. And Notre Dame, there's no excuse. As it was mentioned in the comments, there was 100% no excuse to have only 10 men on the field. And not only being 10 men, only 3 down linemen. At the goal line, when
Twice.
you know they're going to run the ball twice, you don't do that. Somebody on your staff should have been counting. You should have one person on your staff counting the defense and saying, whoa. Get somebody else out there. Get a defensive lineman out there. Get a big lineman out there and just clog the hole. Because all you have to do is clog it. They would have clogged it. They stopped them. But they didn't do that. And so that's on Marcus Freeman as a defensive mind. That's on him. That's on him for not paying attention to the detail. They should have won that game. And to me, that's not even really a knock on Ohio State. You lose Marvin Harrison Jr., who is arguably the best player in college football that's not a quarterback.
That's a fair argument.
Right?
Fair argument.
You can't you lose that big of an asset. It does change things, but at the same time, they got a stable of wide receivers, and so what they've got to do, take this win, hone in, and they've got to make it all the way to the big game undefeated, and either beat Michigan or do enough to where they can get themselves back into the playoffs. But today, I don't think that Ryan Day is fully the problem. Now, he was born on third base, but he was a part of those teams that helped get it to third base before. So he's been there for a while. It's not like he just walked in and just hired them, randomly off the street and gave them that. He was a part of that growth. It's just that he needs to find his identity. And this year, unfortunately for them at quarterback, they're still trying to find it. Their defense is pretty stout. They did well against him. Defense looks real good. Their offense is still trying to figure it out with that new quarterback, and that's going to hurt them long term. But yeah, that last part, head scratcher, dog.
So you said they need to get undefeated to Michigan. The problem is, and this isn't going to be my week 3 team, but it's a team that impressed, or a week 4 team, but it's a team that impressed in week 4. They've got to get past Penn State, who they literally just shut out Iowa, which, it's Iowa. They still don't have a great offense.
Them boys have a contract that their offensive coordinator has to score how many points a game, or his ass is grass. So I don't know if that's the team.
31-0. So they scored on Iowa, and they kept Iowa at 0. That showed me there. That game showed me Penn State's for real. They're going to be a threat in the Big Ten Conference. I'm not sure Ohio State gets past Penn State.
That's a fair argument. But I'll say this. I need James Franklin to prove more to me than I need Ryan Day. And I say that because Ryan Day has played in a few playoff games. If
Hell of a point.
if James Franklin can prove to me that he can get over the hump, because that's the thing. I think James Franklin's a really good coach. Problem is he ain't got over the hump at all since he's been there. It's always dealing with Michigan and Ohio State he can't get past. He gets past them, shut up. He got to get past them first.
State is they only got to get past one of them this year, and it's going to be Ohio State. I think, right? They only got to get past Ohio State.
I think they play.
Yeah, they'd have to play Michigan.
Oh no, they play Michigan, but it's at home.
They're on the same. They're on the same side of the big.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, I think they left divisions this year, but yeah. No, they still have divisions, do they?
You're thinking of the ACC. You're
Okay.
thinking of the ACC.
Actually, everybody else in college football besides these people.
Yeah, no. But I think that they were floating it. They still have divisions for this season.
They play both. So they travel to the Horseshoe, and then Michigan comes to town in November.
Regardless how I look at it, I think Penn State's a really good team. I think they beat Ohio
Always
State
are.
this year.
They're always disciplined.
I think they beat Ohio State. Drew Aller looks really good. I think he's thrown for like 68% or 69%.
Drew Aller, yeah. Aller is not bad.
Really good against the blitz right now.
He is. Is he like one of the higher rated quarterbacks?
He was the highest before this weekend. In all of college football, he is beating the blitz at the highest clip. He's a freshman.
Yeah.
What? It feels like he's a freshman.
They've got a good run game. Their receiver core doesn't look bad. I'm telling you, Penn State might be a threat.
This is a happy accident. That was, sometimes things just work
out. There's no accident. I saw you getting dressed before the show, so I ran into there and get myself dressed too. I mean, you threw away my toothbrush, sure, but that doesn't mean I'm not there.
True.
Hey, we could go there for the Texas game, Jay, and hang out with Ty and do a live video after the game.
Stay there. I know Ty was working on that, so I don't know if he had any.
We're definitely doing something there. Definitely got to get something for that game going. But PG, who is your team that stood out to you this weekend? It doesn't have to be the biggest winners. I know that was the headline. We'll get to that, right? We'll get to the teams that I think had a big win this weekend to really help them. But who stood out to you?
Missouri stood out to me. They're 4-0. They have won again, another one-score game. They got to go to Vanderbilt. There's a really good chance they're going to be 5-0 by the time they play LSU. And I think at the beginning of the year, we talked about the Missouri team only having 1 or 2 wins by this point. So they've completely went out there and proved everybody wrong. And they're just, they've got a really good wide receiver core, and it's helping out a mediocre quarterback in Brady Cook, who's already thrown for 1,000 yards this year, had a 72% completion percentage. The only thing, and this is going to be a thorn in Missouri's side, is they're having a hard time protecting him. He's already been sacked 9 times, but he hasn't thrown a pick yet. So Missouri, I'm not going to say they're a threat to the East, but OU fans, I know you have them watch your show, Ty, and I've said this on mine for a couple weeks now. If Missouri beats Vanderbilt and they either beat a Kentucky, a South Carolina, a Florida, or an Arkansas, and they get to 7 wins, I don't think Williams-Nwaneri flips at that point. And honestly, I think they keep Ryan Wingo and probably pick up a couple other top recruits out of that region.
That's a good one. Missouri is playing pretty good football. Now, they've got some close calls with Kansas State and Memphis, so I pumped the brakes on them overall.
It's a good team though, and Missouri is Memphis is a very formidable opponent down there. They're not the
they are, and they beat them basically at the end of the game by grinding it out, which the K-State game was literally the last kick of the game. From 50-something yards, so that was a really good kick. I'm
61.
Not downplaying. 61. There you go. It was a deep kick. Something that they very common in college football. And so, like I said, no shade to them whatsoever. And they did a good job of having a 2-score lead against Memphis to wrap up the game. And, they gave up a touchdown at the end, but they was able to get into, victory formation by getting the first down that was needed to win it. But Memphis is a formidable opponent, but Memphis is also a G5. So we, of course, will have questions about them playing them that close for as much as they did. And Kansas State should have probably won that game, but at the same time, Missouri got that long kick. So not downplaying their victories, but because they're winning the games that are in front of them, and that's what's most important. They're winning, they're gutting out victories, which is a good thing, because close victories is typically the Achilles heel of most teams, especially with a quarterback like Cook, who's still trying to get his bearings and stuff. He's showing enough poise for me to say, okay, let's see what they do when they get to the big dogs within the SEC. And then I can really start to critique them. Then I will understand them. Because this week's game, they play against Vanderbilt at Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt was supposed to be better this year, and they're not looking like it. Missouri needs to go in there and thrash them. If that game's close,
who
I'm
put
nervous.
their faith in Vandy?
But see,
Right.
exactly. I understand what you're saying, though. But at the same time, Missouri, I think the point is, it's as long as they're winning, even though it's an ugly win, to these recruits, it makes it look like all they need is me to help get it turned around.
And that's fair. They've got 3 ugly wins. MTSU 23-19, then Kansas State with the long field goal, and then Memphis was trying to mount a comeback. Again, they're winning the games and they're grinding them out, which is what you want. The question is going to be when they go against more of these potent offenses. They've got LSU, then Kentucky, then South Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, and then Florida. 6 straight games. Then they travel to Arkansas.
I don't think Florida's that good, to be honest with you. I know they're ranked. I don't think they're that good.
I don't know that they can stop that damn rushing attack, though.
That's my point.
Etienne is dude.
Little Etienne is doing it. Trevor Etienne.
Yeah,
Trevor
I
Etienne.
swear to you, though, the craziest thing about it is this is one of the few times I can remember where there is a family member of a former guy in college football that was great, right?
Yes.
Big brother Etienne. But it looks like he transferred from Clemson, sat out a bunch of years. We all forgot that he was still in college football, and he just popped back up. He runs so similar. Like, he is a dude.
It's like a clone of
So
Travis. It's really weird when I watched him run. I'm like, did he? No, that's the little brother. Fast. And the best thing is his older brother is 40, 50 miles away in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
So, of course, they're communicating and helping each other out. But anyway, my point is I don't know what Missouri looks like in that 6-game stretch. That 6-game stretch is going to tell me everything I need to know about them. If they lose all 6 of those games, then what, PG? Like, what's the questions at that point?
See, and I don't think I think with the way they're playing now, I think they can scrap out at least 1 or maybe 2, because the thing is, South Carolina,
and it's fair.
They hang in there, but I think South Carolina and Missouri, they're not too far off from each other in terms of what the product they put on the field. At Kentucky, I think the jury's still out on what Kentucky's going to be. So, like, those are 2 very winnable games in that stretch, to where even if they get one of the 2 and then they can finish the season with a win versus Florida or Arkansas or both, I think it's really easy for 1, Drink to keep his job, but 2, to go out there and not only pitch to these recruits and to any transfer portal folks, hey, come play for us because we're close. We just need a little bit more to get us over the hump.
Yeah. No, and I get that. And you're not wrong in that assessment. My point is what gives me confidence in Missouri is the fact that they were able to gut out those 3 wins. And that's why I say I give them kudos for that, because that's tough. But they did have 3 close games in teams that they probably shouldn't have had 3 close games against. They should have probably overpowered them. And so, but they gutted it out. And so the question is going to be, can they do that against LSU, a Kentucky, a South Carolina, a Georgia, a Tennessee, a Florida, and then in the season against Arkansas? That's actually 7 straight games of teams that we technically thought could potentially end the year, because we thought Missouri was going to be a casualty of them, ending the game with double-digit wins.
You want to hear something crazy, though? I think Missouri has a chance to upset Georgia, because last year, if you remember, Georgia struggled in the first half against Missouri, and it took Georgia a second half surge to beat them. And Georgia has not looked good this year against everybody they've played. They have struggled against everybody, and that might be a little bit of just championship hangover, but I don't think you can have championship hangover against Missouri when they have a Luther Burden or a Theo Weiss that they can toss the ball out to, and they're going to cook whoever is in the backfield.
My question is, Georgia going to be undefeated going into that game? That's the question.
That's another question.
That's the bigger question for me. We'll see if honestly, the 4-game stretch you've got is Auburn, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, and then Florida before Missouri. So can one of the, I think Kentucky probably will be one of the tougher ones because they're a pretty physical team too. But I see Georgia going in there undefeated. There's no way they don't go into that game undefeated. But we'll see how that goes.
Now, Missouri's got the 42nd ranked defense this year so far, and last year they were in the 30s. So if they can somehow replicate that again,
so they're going
I just
backwards.
feel like Missouri's going to be a tougher opponent, and they're going to be tough to beat on the recruiting trail at that point. So
you're telling me they're going backwards?
You said what?
So you're telling me they're going backwards?
They're going backwards, but yet they're winning games this year. So you know what? If that's what it takes to win games.
Again, they're winning them by gutting them out against teams they probably shouldn't. So we'll see how that goes.
Jay, my man, tell me which team stood out to you this weekend.
Man, I'm going to be 100% honest. As you mentioned, Ty, it's not one of those games that actually it's kind of a big game to me. It was Washington State. I mean, Cameron Ward is absurd, dog. Look, when I watched him come from Incarnate Word, I'm like, who is this dude? Who is this quarterback that's transferred to Washington State? What is he going to look like? First year there, I was like, oh, he may be something. This season, dog, he threw for 404 yards, man. Was that 5 total touchdowns in that game? He's completing 74% of his passes. 13 touchdowns this season, 0 picks. He cooking 1,300 yards passing this season, man. Look, man, Cameron Ward is the quarterback to me that him and Drake May right now are my 2 favorite quarterbacks in college football. They both just go out there and just do absurd stuff. And you're like, I did not expect. I mean, we saw Drake May come on the scene last season. And so that's when we're like, okay, he's a Heisman candidate. We need to put our boy Cameron Ward in there. 28 for 34 in that game. 28 for 34 against an Oregon State defense that's actually not bad. I mean, he ate them alive, but an Oregon State defensive side, but my God, he is a beast. And so for me, I am sold on what Cameron Ward's doing at Washington State. Dude, and as mentioned by Alpha Dog, Pac-12 is the best conference literally in college football. They got the best set of quarterbacks, period. They're fun to watch. They're making me stay up late to watch Pac-12 after dark just so I can be exhausted on Sunday morning. Like, they're so much fun. And I was actually debating between them and Washington because Michael Penix Jr., oh my God.
Bro, I've been telling everybody that would listen for a year now, Penix and Washington are different. Like, that offense is different. Can you imagine if they still had PK and Jimmy Lake calling that defense back there when they had that 2013 Huskies defense? Or maybe it wasn't 13 the year, but you know that era Huskies defense I'm talking about. Like,
yes.
Oh my gosh. This team would be just on a warpath right now. I love the Washington State pick. You and I picked them on Bleacher Report, and I think both of us echoed each other's sentiment. The big reason is Cameron Ward.
Yeah.
Give
me a quarterback that's going to – yes. Give me a team that's going to shut him down, and then I will tell you I think that you're crazy at that moment.
You want to know what, though? We're being robbed this year because we don't get to see Washington State play USC.
Nope. Pisses me off.
Maybe they'll make the Pac-12 championship.
Bro, I have no idea who's going to the Pac-12 championship this year.
Dude, this Pac-12, it could be Colorado still got a puncher's chance in the Pac-12 championship right now.
I'm still leaning in on my Oregon pick. I think it will most likely be Oregon versus, if Cam Rising comes back healthy, Utah. I think they're probably the most disciplined teams in the conference, and they're the ones that can actually play defense.
So you don't have USC there. So how many losses do you have for USC then?
I think USC end up losing probably 1, and that's what knocks them out of it.
Oh, come on, Jay. Give me 2 or 3.
I don't know, man. I don't know. The question, I put it like this. This is going to be an extremely hot take, but yeah, I saw that defense against Arizona State, right?
Yeah, they
and Arizona State
listen,
didn't have.
He won that game like he did
without
Jaden
Rashada
with Oklahoma.
Their third string quarterback was out there. They were out there. Everybody has pointed out. I actually did a recording with a friend that works at Stadium, And we were discussing. He's like, "Man, USC's defense is bad." And I'm just laughing. I'm like, "Really?" He's like, "No, they're bad." He's like, "Every time I've gone through every bit of film he played DB at UNC. Y'all will see it on Wednesday when I do the premiere on it." But he's like, "Man, I played DB at UNC. I've studied this game heavy, and they look bad." And he's like, "I don't know why. They've got the talent. They just look bad." And he laughed and was like, and this is very much a hot take here. Don't be surprised if Colorado puts up a whole bunch of points on them, because
They will.
USC doesn't
Colorado-
have the
I've been
defenders
calling that
Oregon
as an
has.
upset, Jay. I've been calling that as an upset for
You
a
have.
while.
You
Because
have.
it's
And I'm
it's
saying
the
that as a hot
elevation
take
change.
because so many people have saw what Oregon did to Colorado, but people fail to realize that Oregon always has some defensive player that's absurdly talented. I mean, they had Thibodeau, 2 years ago? No, last year. Last year, Thibodeau was there. And they're known for bringing those edges and defensive linemen randomly out of nowhere and sometimes skills guys. Oregon usually has a pretty solid defense, and Dan Lanning knows what he's doing defensively. USC's that struggle, man. If Colorado goes out there and score points on them, dog, we're going to start Gritch message board stuff's going to show up.
I've got 4 games being lost by USC right now, and they're scheduled. And here's why: they've got to go at Notre Dame. I just can't see them winning that game right now. I feel like they're going to make, again, this is going to be a classic Lincoln Riley game where they make Sam Hartman look like a freaking Heisman Trophy quarterback. You're going to have Utah. If Cam Rising's in that game, they lose it, even though it's in LA. Then you have Washington at home, and then you have to go to Eugene. Those are 4 teams right now on defensively and offensively. I feel like they're playing better than USC.
Yeah, it's bad. Like watching them, it's bad. And yes, you're right. You're right. Mike Cox has been kicking my tail the last 2 weeks. I got to figure this out. But anyway, yeah, that's just kind of what I look at it when it comes to watching USC, and that's not even me trying to shade Lincoln Riley. Everybody's looking at them saying, "How are you letting Arizona State do this to you? Like, how are you letting them do this? Almost scoring it. Why? Like, why?"
This is
Ty, can you answer that question for us? Why?
This is
How
what he
is
was
this
doing here at
allowed?
Oklahoma, though. Is there
Brother.
anything? Was this not expected?
I mean, but everyone's told me it's different. Every USC fan keeps reminding me it's different.
Look, I've said if there was any conference I think that the USC defensive philosophy would work, it would be the Pac-12, but it's just not working. I'm sorry guys, I'm laughing because I don't know if one of the Oklahoma fans apparently saw my live stream earlier and is now on Twitter saying, let me see, if you think Oklahoma isn't one of the most hated teams in the country, check out this dude's headlines. Out of all of the games that happened this weekend, he chose to put OU football not that good as the first bulletin point. Starting to see a trend, not realizing that I was talking about what they were talking about on Barstool Sports whenever they said. So KC Holtz, reading comprehension, my friend. Comprehension. I would attempt it. You hate to see it, but more than that, you love to see it. You just love when people tell on themselves, man. Just the best. But that pack defense, it's not going to work, and it's going to work even less whenever they make it to the Big Ten, right? Because we've seen the Grinch defense in the Big Ten. It didn't work there. Actually, they had a situation where they had a defense be a top unit in the nation, get inherited by Alex Grinch, and then turn out a lot worse. I'm just not look, I wanted that defense to work out because I like some of the coaches. I really like Williams. I thought that Lincoln Riley did a good job retaining him, but it's just not working, man. Just
The thing is, I mean, BV knows Grinch isn't a good coordinator because when he went to USC, it was rumored he tried to get BV out there. So he knew. He tried to get an elite defensive coordinator.
Yeah, they know their problem. But let's get into the biggest wins of the weekend, guys. Now, these don't have to necessarily be like, when I say biggest wins, doesn't have to be the most impressive. Just why is the win big for the program, right? One of them has got to be that Florida State win over Clemson. I know they were the favorite over Clemson, but it's almost like getting over the hump, right? And they didn't win impressively, right? But that was the best I'd seen Clemson play this whole year. And Keon Coleman, when the moment mattered, I mean, geez Louise, he showed up and showed up big. I'm really interested to see how Florida State continues to navigate this season, because they have some talent offensively. But guys, one thing that was kind of confusing to me, they kept trying to just spam 4 verticals like they were playing Madden. Did y'all notice that? Throughout the game, it almost looked like it was someone had the sticks playing Madden, and all they were trying to do was test the Clemson DBs vertically again and again and again. And that's why I kept noticing they had so many 3 and outs. And it got to a certain point, it was like, man, that's got to change. Like, you got to put together some drives. They get a big win. I think it's good for Florida State to get over that hump. Interesting to see what they do for the rest of their season. PG, who stood out to you?
Well, I've actually got 2. And I know Frightening Truth is going to love this one, but actually I think the Texas Longhorns win over Baylor was pretty big, because just like Oklahoma, that's a game that in the past they would have blown it, and Texas goes out there and they win it pretty handily in McLean Stadium, which isn't the easiest place to play. So it was a nice win for Texas there. But then additionally, I've got West Virginia. I mean, you were literally on the cusp of potentially firing your head coach last year, and you turn it out, you lose to Penn State. I mean, I think was an obvious loss looking at their schedule. But right now they're sitting at 3-1. They've beat the teams that are supposed to beat the way they did. And then they just went out and got a victory against Texas Tech, who I believe a lot of the people nationally were high on all year long. So West Virginia is sitting at 3-1. That's not where a lot of people thought they'd be. And I thought that was a great win for them, getting their program back on track and in the right direction.
Man, because they were getting buried before this season.
No, I mean, like literally, he was on the hot seat. He was gonna get fired after that OU game last year.
Yeah. We were waiting for Brown to get out. I mean, I remember listening to Coos talk over there at Coos's Corner, West Virginia content. Fantastic job that he does. Their coach was getting fired. They were trying to figure out when they're gonna fire him and how soon. And now they're walking out there and chest out a little bit like, y'all gonna cause some problems.
They've got a tough schedule ahead of them. They got to go to TCU next week and then to Houston, but then they got Okie Light, who, I mean, at this point they should beat them because they're going to be the bottom feeders of this conference. And then they got to play BYU, UCF, Oklahoma, Cincinnati, Baylor. So it's not an easy schedule in front of them, but if they can turn this season around and at least go bowling, hey, that's a pretty good turnaround for West Virginia, and it might just save Brown's job.
Oh no. That would, in 100% ways, save his job if he can go through and do that. Oh, for me, big winner one of the big winners to me this weekend had to be Bama, man. We've had so much doubt on what Bama's trying to figure out there, and a lot of people are, of course, tossing out their opinions on the Milroe benching and that being an example, quote unquote, to try to get him motivated and everything. I question that part, even though, I mean, Nick Saban said it. Sure, I don't know. But figuring out that identity, especially at quarterback, has been important and something we need Bama to do. And I'm happy that they pulled out this win. I told y'all he wasn't losing to 2 assistant coaches at once. Maybe one time. There ain't going to be no group thing on him. Not on Nick Saban's watch. He's not into the group thing. And so being able to go out there, gut this W out, and just finish off Ole Miss. That second half was fantastic, masterful work by what we expect out of an Alabama team, because Ole Miss is not a slouch. They have a lot of talent on the field. Just putting it together is the most important part, and I'm proud that W came. That's a huge win for me. That to me tells me that Bama is starting to finally, hopefully, come around that corner and figuring out who they're going to be for the rest of the season. I said that Bama can go in 10-2, 11-1, no problem, because I still question them against LSU right now. I think LSU just has a better identity, and Brian Kelly figures it out at the end of the season more so than he does at the beginning. So that's going to be a tough game, but I think Bama is going to be like Bama of old going to the rest of the season. and we'll see if they can gut it out and head to the SEC championship game.
It really was a tale of two halves, right?
Yes.
Like the first half was ugly, and I'm just sitting there bashing my head against a table thinking this is why you don't hold out the best quarterback option for the week prior, right? And the week prior was just absolute nuttiness. We've talked about this, guys. That USF game, I'm going to just be happy when I forget that game ever happened. Yeah, that's one that I'm just going to be happy to forget. But that second half, Alabama found an identity. Jalen Milroe with that deep shot is dangerous, right? There's his intermediate game has got to develop. The short game can be there. I think that Tommy Rees could certainly help him out in the short game by giving him some easier options, some quicker options. But his deep ball, like that's one thing he's got that is just beautiful. That throw he had to Jalen Hale, shout out to the true freshman from Texas who, ladies and gentlemen, I think he's well on his way to earning. And we have a dog in the house listening to the sport takes.
She wanted to hop up in the lap. So.
You love to see it. But Jalen Hale, true freshman, caught a big pass. That throw from Milroe was big. Him standing in the pocket, seeing the guy come right towards him and being like, you know what? This is what you got to do to play quarterback, and delivering a beautiful throw. If Alabama's offense can take what they did in that second half and move forward, it will be an offense that can have success. It's not going to be the Bryce Young offenses, right? But it can be an offense that you can have a lot of success with. What I'm just so have you seen Seth? That's foul. That's foul.
So Alpha Dog made a point on here. Milroe is 10 for 16 on deep passes. That's effing elite. It really is really good. What's your complaint there? What is your complaint there?
His deep ball is actually like dimes.
Yeah, and I'm looking at it. I mean, his NFL, his rating to the outside left, 3 for 4, in the middle, between the numbers, 6 for 9, and then outside right, 1 of 2. With a touchdown on each one. He's got a touchdown in each one of those. On the left, middle, and on the right. 2 on the left, 2 in the middle, 1 on the right.
Get to take, and I told you. What'd you tell me so about, Nia? But sure, yeah, I mean, absolutely. Milroe, if they can just cut out the turnovers, Bama's going to be good. Because this is something I talked about earlier. When I was watching the All-22, their wide receivers are actually getting open. Like, running some decent routes, they're getting separation. It's just all about getting that rhythm with Jalen Milroe. Hopefully they can go on. Big test next weekend as well. I know there are people saying, oh, but it's Mississippi State. It's Mississippi State running a 3-3-5, right? We're still trying to figure out who we are as an offense, and it's going to be a lot of work. So it's a big game for Alabama. Any game where they can get Jalen Milroe reps is a big game. I'll tell y'all what I am really impressed about, though. That defense, guys. Like, the defense, there are 3 or 4 inside linebackers this year that I think are better than the inside linebackers from last year. Kendrick Blackshire is playing like a man possessed. Campbell playing real good football. Lawson, hopefully the injury for him isn't too bad. But that secondary, they're stingy for Bama. They're running right stride with people. Even I talked about during that Texas game, if you go back and look, there are times where, yes, they're beat. But for the most part, a lot of those catches were great throws by Quinn, great catches by the receiver, and the DB was in a position, right, that you look at and you're like, well, you were in the vicinity. Caleb Downs really starting to come into his own. He had a real big game. I think, Jay, I saw it was interesting, right as you shared that post earlier about Key Lawrence being the highest graded safety from this past weekend for Pro Football Focused. I just seen another grade from Pro Football Focus on Caleb Downs, and he was graded a little bit lower than Key Lawrence, but it had some of the things he had done. He had a really good game against Ole Miss. He had a real solid game against Ole Miss. So look, I'm happy coming out of that game as an Alabama fan. It's something they definitely needed. Guys, my game that I wanted to talk about was that Clemson game and how I think it was big for FSU. Not that they won big, but that they got that off. They got over that hump. But what does this mean for Clemson? Right? Because we talk about some of these conversations sometimes about, are there such good things as good win or good losses? I apologize. Clemson lost this game, but they played better in this game than I think they've played all year long. I'm not sure, man. I'm not sure what to think of Clemson. I'm not saying they're going to win a playoff game, nothing like that. But did Clemson find at least some sort of rhythm this weekend? Jay, I'll start with you.
Did Clemson find a rhythm or?
Yeah, just some sort of rhythm offensively that maybe they can take and turn into success throughout the season.
I do. I think that Clemson, that was a good battle. This is not Clemson's year. Point blank period, hard stop. They're not who they need to be progressive for the rest of the season, for them to be able to compete for a playoff, let's put it that way. And so, but this game was enough of a battle and good enough to see what potential they have. And Neo posted in here about Sean Lewis and how many points he was able to score on BV and how much he was able to score on Dan Lanning. I think that's what Neo was talking about.
Oh, yeah. So I don't think Neo thinks Sean Lewis is a good offensive mind. Because they were in my stream the other day and they were like, oh, well, OU only held them to, I think they said 7 at first. And I was like, yeah, but then they went and gave Georgia hell a few weeks later. And they were like, yeah, but, we did this. So that proves that they weren't. And look, fair enough. To hold Sean Lewis offense to that's fair. I also wouldn't necessarily blame Sean Lewis for the loss for Colorado entirely because they were just so outmatched. But no, you were right because I thought that they had gotten 7 and you said it was 3. But sorry, Jake.
But yeah, it's okay. No. Yeah, I wanted to make sure I point that out before I forgot. But anyway, no, I think Clemson has figured something out. Shipley is that dude. Will Shipley is that dude. They just got to figure out their pass game and their scheme and what they're going to actually do offensively. Defensively, you can tell they miss BB. And it's funny talking to my buddy about it. He pointed out how BV had a lot of players at Clemson playing that probably wouldn't be playing anywhere else because teams didn't have them because of the faith that he put into them and getting them going. They probably wouldn't play. He was known for pulling players out the game, and that's actually what he said about Oklahoma's defense. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But a lot of those players may not, because being out of position, not knowing the scheme, their defense does not look good. And you can tell the difference between having BV and not having BV. And to be honest, those players are still BV's players. They're still the same dudes. Why aren't they playing at that same level? But you can tell it's coaching. It's the way the scheme runs. It's the way the plays are called. You can tell the difference. And that was really his point. It was some of those guys, you almost ask, why would you even play that person? But then you see them play, you're like, oh, I probably wouldn't have seen that out of them. But that's something that you see based upon the way the coach coaches. And so Clemson is struggling with that. They're struggling with their true identity. But guess what? They're going to be better, I think, long-term once they find their true identities on both sides of the ball. And so it's going to take Dabo another year. It may take another coordinator change. But going from coordinators that have been there between 5 and 10 years, you kind of notice the struggle. And I think that's honestly what Bama's dealing with right now too. I mean, you had Kirby Smart for 9 years before you switched it out. Things were still kind of rolling with, initially with Golding, and then it just started to slowly erode. You start to realize, oh, he's probably not that guy. And so now once you find the next guy, it'll get back to normal. It just takes time. But elite coaches is what you got to have next to you if you really want to be successful. And I don't think Clemson has that yet, or they're just not developed into that yet. And so it's going to take time for Dabo to figure it out. But I think that they'll be fine this year. I think they'll end up with 8 to 10 wins and be okay. They may actually finish the rest of this season without losing a game. I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah. Look, I'm interested in seeing how they recover. PG, what'd you think?
I think I think Clemson's on a bad track here. I disagree with you. I actually think they might lose at least one more game this season. I mean, they got to go play an undefeated Syracuse team next week, and Syracuse ain't no push around. And then doesn't Clemson have to play North Carolina in Drake May? at the end or towards the end of the season? Now I know that game's in depth but still.
Let me go look.
I'll have their schedule up in front of me.
I'm gonna pull it up right now.
I'm worried for Clemson.
Drake May. Drake May comes to Death Valley.
Yeah.
So does Notre Dame.
I don't know, man. Clemson just hasn't looked like they're clicking on all cylinders, and I'm not sure. Even though they might have found a rhythm this weekend against Florida State and might have looked good, I'm not sold now on Clemson. I was high on them at the beginning of the year with that Garrett Riley hire, but I think it's going to need a full year in development, and I think Clemson's going to have a rough year. My question is, can Clemson hold on to some of these elite recruits that they've gotten on the recruiting trail to continue to stabilize this team going into the next season? That's my question.
They got 5 straight games against teams with at least 3 wins or more going forward.
Syracuse, Miami, Notre Dame, North Carolina.
Wake Forest, Miami, North Carolina State, Notre Dame, then Georgia Tech. They'll have a losing record. Then North Carolina and wrap it up at South Carolina.
And that South Carolina game is not going to be an easy one.
Nope.
So, I mean, that's the thing. I think Clemson could lose 2 more games this season. Realistically, I think that's a possibility.
It's not unfair. That's a fair statement.
I'm really asking myself, can they hold on to? I know they were going to hold on to Sammy Brown. I don't think that one's going to go away. But can they hold on to a Bryant Wesco, who they probably need on the offensive side of the ball to be a weapon for Cade Klubnik? Additionally, can they hold on to a Corey Gibson, who's been a guy that's been rumored to potentially flip to Texas? I think this is going to be a tough season for Clemson fans, and it's going to be a tough season for Dabo, because I think Dabo's got to take a real hard look in the mirror and say, I'm going to have to hit this transfer portal. It's not good enough to just do well on the recruiting trail anymore.
Yeah, well, he's got to hit the transfer portal. That's got to be something that changes.
It ain't going to happen, but he needs to.
Yeah, I mean, that gets into a whole different conversation, right? What needs to happen versus what won't. Guys, as we're entering into the last talking point for this evening, I have up there an OU linebacker is playing insane, because we were talking before, and I was showing y'all some of the notes I have from that Oklahoma-Cincinnati game. And there's a common theme I'm noticing when I'm taking the notes on this Oklahoma game. And it's that 28 is popping up again and again and again and again and again. And then wouldn't you know it, I looking at the bottom of the pile, up is 28 rising. And I'm like, how in the hell? It's just right now, you cannot watch that Oklahoma defense and not notice Danny Stutzman flying around doing his thing. It's like a sore thumb sticking out right now. I wanted to talk about that, but I also wanted to talk about a subject that's getting me in a little bit of trouble on Twitter right now, apparently. Right? It's gotten me in a little bit of hot water. A show on Barstool Sports stated, and I quote, "Oklahoma is not that good." I disagree with that premise. I don't know how you don't watch Oklahoma and come away with the fact thinking that they're not that good. Jay, one of the things you've heard me say it 3 or 4 times now, we would have all rode off into the sunset happy as a clam if Oklahoma would have beaten Arkansas State 40-0, 45-0, but they did so 70-0. I mean, they demolished them. Oklahoma has been demolishing teams, and the defense, the guys on that defense, they're playing with more confidence. And that's going to be big, playing with more understanding, playing with more confidence. What I will say is I don't know how good Oklahoma is yet, and I think that that's a fair question to ask. In fact, I said this earlier on my stream. I likened it to Alabama. I have no idea how good Alabama is. I've seen them play decent. I've seen them play absolutely terrible, and then I saw a half that featured both. I have no idea who you are, which is why Mississippi State is so big next weekend. Gives me more data. Guys, I want to pass it to y'all. Talk to me about Danny Stutzman and this defense, how good he's playing, what he's allowing this defense to do, and then talk to me about some of the national media kind of saying that Oklahoma isn't all that good right now, when personally I disagree, and I think you can just look at the results on the field and see they're playing pretty good football.
Well, don't worry. I'm going back and forth with your friend right now, Casey Holes, because apparently he's never even watched your video, Ty. So he just clipped the title and just said, hey, this is it. No context. But no.
How did he fight? Because that first comment he has up is Chris's first comment from the thing. So I had to pop up in his homepage somehow.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I told him, I said, hey, you at least gotta go check out Wisconsin because he talks about OU stuff. But no, you can't
I'm
play
sorry,
like that with
Casey.
no
I'm sorry.
context. Like, but no, I mean, Danny Stutzman's a dude, and I mean, we talked about it preseason, all preseason actually, and I mean, people called me crazy, but Danny Stutzman could be a guy that could win the Butkus, and I think people are really starting to catch on to this now because, and I think we were talking about it in the green room. You guys said Danny Stutzman could go in the first round if he continues to play like this, which selfishly, I don't want him to go to the first round because I want him to stay at least another year because could you imagine this linebacker core with a Danny Stutzman back and the guys that they already have in that locker room already getting mentored by Danny Stutzman and Danny Stutzman being the absolute dude that he is in the locker room and watching the film, yeah, you want Danny Stutzman to return. But no, Danny Stutzman is, I think, the heart and soul of this defense and maybe even the heart and soul of this team. I mean, when you look at the leader that Danny Stutzman has became over last year, he is definitely the reason why Oklahoma is in the position that they're in.
My take on Stutzman is, I mean, he led the Big 12 in tackles last year, right? And so people were like, oh, because the team was bad and, you know, blah, blah, blah. This year, I believe he leads the Big 12 in tackles again, or he's right up there. And so now I ask the question, with the team playing better and he's out there doing this, like, which one is it? Is he just taking about tackles because, you know, the team sucks, or is he really good? Of course, I lean towards the really good side because everybody nationally is recognizing him. They're looking at him and like, oh my God, Danny Stutzman is absurd. And so that Barstool deal, which is funny, I put a tweet out. Y'all probably seen, or whatever X calls them nowadays. I don't know what the names are. I can't keep up with you young hipsters nowadays. But they put that out there. And so I was like, you know what? Let me go see what's going on here. Let me see how they get engaged. I went back and looked at their prior 5 tweets. The Oklahoma one probably has over 500 likes and a whole bunch of engagement, right? The other ones maybe have 40 likes and like 2 or 3 replies. Tells me everything I need to know. The whole point of that is to get engagement. They just wanted people to engage and be mad. And so I've told everybody, do not engage. Don't give them what they want. They're looking for people to engage and be mad. That's what they're looking for. I think it's funny because everybody in the national media is looking at Oklahoma saying, okay, this is what we saw last year, but it looks different in comparison to last year. They look like they're executing the way you're supposed to. Now, granted, the only thing you're going to see is you got to go to the Texas game. And after the Texas game, if Stutzman shows out in that game, people are still going to say, well, y'all didn't really play anybody. Texas is okay. And I know my Texas fans in here are going to be like, dude, what are you talking about? No. Texas is not okay. Texas is a pretty good team. So, linebacker-wise, if Stutzman shows out continuously for the rest of this season, he's going to be downplayed because they're going to talk about the competition that we play. But I'm going to tell you this. If he continues, it's a Butkus winner. He's going to be up there. And so this question, Anthony, who's a better linebacker combination, middle? Kiko and KJ at Miami? That's a tough one. Danny and Byron.
He might mean Kanak.
Oh, Jared Kanak?
How'd you get Jared Kanak and Byron mixed up?
I don't know. That's why I was trying to figure out, man, is that. But as Friday mentioned, Ford is their Butkus winner, but at the same time, they're both really good.
Well, I think JT Tuamailoa might say something about that too.
He has an argument as well, but when you're looking at all the numbers around linebackers, I'm just saying who's up there. We know who's battling for it, is my point.
Yes.
He deserves to be in that rank, in that conversation. He's playing like a Butkus finalist. You can't deny it, is more so my point. He's filling gaps. He's coming out of nowhere with tackles. He's doing stuff that you're like, I didn't realize you had that kind of talent. He's taking another step up. Teddy Lehman, of course, OU grad, but Butkus winner, is pointing that out himself. He's like, no, he's taking it to the next level. Dude's up there. He may be up there with me in my days. I'm just telling you that from a Butkus winner. I ain't because he's been hard on Stutzman the last 2 seasons. He sees it too.
Yeah, I definitely think Stutz has taken a step up. Guys, you can tell right now, Kanik is still learning. His athleticism flashes on the screen, though, but you can tell. Kanik is a guy that he can make a bit of a mistake, be a step off, and it's not going to kill him because he's got the athleticism to get right back in position. But Stutz is playing with a different type of understanding right now. He is playing with a confidence, with an understanding that is really impressive. He's stepping up in the hole. I mean, he's on a warpath right now. And I think it's fair to say he will be a finalist for the Butkus. If he continues playing the way he will, I know Frightening Truth is down here saying Ford is the Butkus winner. Ford will be right up there too, man. Ford is disgusting. That guy right there is unbelievable at the line. There's a lot of great linebacker play this year. Like, if I look across college football, there's a lot of solid linebacker play. Stutz has got to be mentioned with them, though. Just full
Does
stop.
Ford get the advantage, though, because of the Alabama game?
I mean, look, it's a huge game. There's no doubt about it. I think it depends who Alabama is, right? Like, and we'll see in the next coming weeks. If Alabama continues to improve and they hit their stride, it'll look like a good game. But if Alabama is the team that played USF, they'll get caught at least one more time, right? So we'll see. That'll really tell the story. There is who is Alabama, and I don't know who Alabama is. I have no idea. I think I know, but I'm not 100% certain yet.
Right. I agree.
They aren't going to be on that team, Jay. This is similar. QB, nobody gives. And oh yeah, DG's playing out of his mind, chicken.
The thing is, though, DG might be playing out of his mind, but there's a lot of other quarterbacks playing out of their mind too. So DG's going to have to fight really hard to get considered for any type of Heisman this year. Because, I mean, we just talked about Cameron Ward. We talked about Michael Penix. You've got, obviously, Caleb Williams, Shedeur Sanders. So it's going to be hard for DG to be getting into that consideration, which, speaking of Heisman, is there a way that Danny Stutzman could get into the Heisman race? I think I saw a tweet out there the other day about talking about who was the linebacker at Notre Dame that got into the Heisman?
Oh, Manti Te'o.
And how Danny Stutzman's technically on a better track to well surpass the stats that he had the year he was a finalist.
Do you want to know? You want to know why? I think Jay, go ahead, because I think we're going to arrive at the same place. Go ahead.
I think we are too. I think the problem for a Stutzman Heisman opportunity is that there's way too good quarterback play this year.
Yep.
There's way too good quarterback play this year, and there's too many players that team will have the record that warrants them being there at the ceremony. That's what it is. If you could find, because it's only going to be 3, they may do 5, but if the quarterback play wasn't so excellent this year with some of these players, then I could totally see it. But in that year, that Manti Te'o year, there wasn't very good play outside of like quarterback, running back. It was not an absurd play. This year, these quarterbacks are stupid good. If you keep Cameron Ward healthy, Michael Penix healthy, Caleb Williams healthy, Drake May healthy,
Shedeur Sanders.
Right. The list is too long.
Now,
unless we can get a 2,000-yard rusher on a national championship contender, which we won't get that.
Now, we've talked about those guys, and obviously I mentioned Danny Stutzman. I know we're kind of getting down the rabbit hole, but we talked about Travis Hunter before he got hurt, potentially being a Heisman guy, because he's playing both sides of the ball, and he's playing both sides really well. I mean, could he have made it to the Heisman? I mean, he's not going to make it now, but could he have made it to the Heisman podium?
It's going to be tough now because of what Jay just said, man. And this is the thing.
But there's nobody else doing what Travis Hunter's done. I mean, we've seen quarterbacks do that. We haven't seen anybody else do what Travis Hunter's doing.
But
problem,
if I may, Jay, so we get into an interesting double-edged sword, right? And I don't know the answer. So I want to lead with I don't know the answer, but here's just a thought process. just the same that we can't necessarily penalize Travis Hunter for being injured, we can't penalize players who weren't injured. Do you get what I mean when I say that? So if Penix goes out and has 350-yard games while Travis Hunter isn't there, that's 3 more games of power, assuming they're all Power 5 production that he will have on Travis Hunter. It's not Travis's fault that he got hurt. He is an unbelievable player, genuinely one of the best players in college football, but it's also not Penix's fault that Travis got hurt. And Penix had to play the game. So it's going to be interesting because you're right, PG. Understand, I don't have the answer because Travis is that sensational. But we get into an interesting conversation of how do we weigh time lost due to injury? Because if we say, oh, it doesn't matter, at some level, inadvertently or not, we are penalizing guys who didn't lose time due to injury.
Yeah. Let me say this on that piece. This is Travis Hunter's path to winning the Heisman. Stay with me because it's an absurd way for him to get there.
This year or starting next year?
This year. I'm talking about this year. Okay. Next year will be the same path. But this year, he comes back in, we'll say 2 weeks. It's probably the closest he can come back. If he comes back in 2 weeks, and if he's able to put up over 1,500 yards receiving, while also having a minimum of 5 interceptions and possibly 1 to 2 defensive touchdowns, he's in the conversation. That is the only way he'll make it.
The conversation, because that's the point. Like, I was really hoping Travis Hunter would get us over that hump of quarterbacks just dominating this award and finally getting a guy that can play defense to win this award, because this award has been so dominated by quarterbacks. And this brings us back to many conversations that we've had on this show. We should change the Heisman because, again, the Heisman has become a quarterback-driven award, and I get the quarterback does so much and has to know, like, if you can think about it, the quarterback has to know everybody's job on the field and their job.
I mean, it's fair, but I mean, in 2020, we had a wide receiver win it, and he got 1,800 yards receiving and 23 touchdowns.
But again,
if you do that,
but again, that was an anomaly. I want to see more.
That's diversity. What you have to have. You can't win the Heisman without it being an anomaly. You can't. Every Heisman Trophy winner has had an anomaly season. Yeah, Caleb Williams threw for 4,500 yards and 42 touchdowns with only 5 interceptions. That ratio is stupid. That's an anomaly year. Go back to all the winners. Every single winner is an anomaly season. Bryce, 4,800 yards, 47 touchdowns, 7 picks.
With an offensive line that was graded as one of the worst in the nation.
There you go. Devontae Smith, 1,800 yards on 117 catches, 23 touchdowns. Stupid. Joe Burrow, 5,600 yards, 60 touchdowns, 6 picks. Stupid. And the funny thing is, number 2, Jalen Hurts had 3,800 yards, 32 touchdowns. He also ran for over 1,000 yards that season and double-digit touchdowns. You see what I'm saying? That's where your problem. Kyler, 4,300 yards, 42 touchdowns, 7 picks, plus he ran for 1,200 yards that year. Same thing with Baker, 4,600 yards, 43. My point is, if you ain't got no anomaly season, you ain't winning the Heisman. Unless nobody has an anomaly season, they take the person with the best stats and the best record. So for Travis Hunter to win it, he has to do things that are so absurd that you can't overlook it. And that's what Charles Woodson did. Because remember, Charles Woodson won that. Let me tell you, Charles Woodson, the last defensive player to actually win the Heisman. He had 7 interceptions. He had a punt return for the touchdown. I think he had 3 kick returns for the touchdown. He beat out Peyton Manning, who had 3,800 yards passing and 36 touchdowns. And Ryan Leaf, who had 3,600 yards, 33 touchdowns. Those aren't anomaly passing seasons. Charles Woodson had anomaly defensive season.
A guy like Travis Hunter, who would have 1,500 passing yard or
receiving yards.
Receiving yards. Let's say he has 10 touchdowns, because I don't think that would be a stretch to say 10 touchdowns. But then on the defensive side of the ball, he's got 5 interceptions, 1 or 2 scores, but he's got, I don't know, let's say 50 solo tackles, and he's got like 12 pass breakups. That's not good enough in terms of an anomaly to play both sides of the ball and play them that well to win the Heisman.
That is an anomaly season, and like I said, that's why I told you the parameters. He has to have a minimum of 1,500 yards receiving from now on for the rest of the season, while adding in at least double-digit touchdowns.
So if
5
he does that,
interceptions.
though, but if he does that,
He might win it.
in 3 games. You're
He
saying
might win it.
the Heisman.
He might win it. If he can put up those numbers after coming off injury, he might win it. Because that's the thing. What would help him, because what helped Charles Woodson is that he also caught 2 touchdowns. He ran for a touchdown. Like, Charles Woodson literally did everything for Michigan that year. Like, he was that dude. Travis Hunter can do that same thing, but he's got to put up video game numbers. And if he does it, I'm telling you, PG, if he does it, yes, he's in the conversation this year or next season. But he would have to have at least 5 interceptions, if not more. And he's probably going to have a defensive touchdown because he's not doing kick and punt returns to add to his touchdown number. That's what helped Charles Woodson, was all the additional touchdowns, because he was scoring touchdowns in so many different facets of the game. You can't deny how ridiculously talented he was, but you can't do it exclusively as a defensive player. It just doesn't work unless you get like 25 or 30 sacks. Then at that point, you're like, okay, that's an anomaly season. We can't pass on it.
It's going to be tough, man.
It is. It is.
Going to be real tough.
I just think it's going to be tough for a running back to win this award now, too.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah. 2,000 yards. You'll need to have – someone needs to get close to Barry Sanders' record if they ever want to win the Heisman as a running back. You got to get close to Barry's number. If you get close to Barry's number, then it's a different story. But no one still has broken his number. And you also got to do it on a team that's in the top 10. Because nobody cares if it's done by, G5s, unfortunately. For them.
Right. Missouri needs to get themselves a running back then that can rush for that many yards. And not be in the top 10 to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, guys, we've been going about an hour. I think it's about that time. I got dinner. Anthony, I did want to hit this comment for you, though. He says, Ty, if the scenario happens, hypothetically, let's say Danny Stutzman and Francisco Mauanoa. I think that's how you say it. I know in some Polynesian dialects, the G sound produces an N, but I could be wrong. And if I'm wrong, I sincerely apologize. I did try and look into how to correctly say that name in the Polynesian dialect, and I believe it's Mauanoa. If they end up with the same stats and they are able to, the 2 top vote getters, who gets it, it's next to impossible to tell, man, because we would have to then theory craft the remaining games of the season, how each team finishes out, because that's when all those little nuances matter, right? Like if they all have the same stats, everything is heads up, then I think for me personally, and I'm not a voter, my next question is who had the more impactful moments, right? Like who can, and I will, Neo, I love Brahms. I will go get Brahms. Brahms is
but Francisco, I'm looking at his stats. He's pretty far behind Danny Stutzman.
I haven't even seen his stats.
I think he's got 18. He's got 18 tackles, 11 solos, 1 forced fumble.
Hey,
that's not even close to Danny Stutzman. Danny Stutzman's got 43 total tackles. I think he's got like 20 something solo tackles, and he's got an interception on the year, and he's got a couple sacks to add to that, which is still above Ford, actually, who I would think is probably the second best right now in the country.
Yeah, Mauanoa has 18 total touchdowns, 2.5 tackles for a loss, no sacks, no interceptions, 1 breakup, no QB hurries, and a forced fumble. Now, he's been all over the place, but statistically, that's not sounding like Danny Stutzman.
No, yeah, Stutz is putting up wild stats right now.
Yeah, the closest one is Jalen Ford, I think, who's got 25 total tackles, 11 solos. But he has 2 interceptions.
And a touchdown.
Is so good.
He also got 10.5 tackles for a loss.
This year?
No, actually, he got less. He got 8 this year. My apologies.
Eric, thank you so much for the 50. My word. He says Stutzman is a bomb. He's busting. I mean, he's got to be on the early list for Butzman winner.
43 tackles total, 24 of those assists, 19 solos, 8 tackles for the loss right now, 2 sacks, a 4 fumble recovery, an interception is returned for a touchdown and a hurry. So he's about lined up with Francisco, but he has more.
Yeah, I'll say this. I just don't want Oklahoma fans to give their hopes up, because I've already seen it in the chat. If Danny Stutzman goes out there and wins the Butkus, we're going to flip Sammy Brown. I don't want OU fans to give themselves their up. Sammy Brown and Peyton Pierce, I think those ships have pretty much sailed. I don't think you guys need to be putting your hope in that Oklahoma lands those guys. So
they're never coming back.
Yeah. I mean, Clemson would literally have to have a detrimental season
I
for
don't see that
Sandy Brown
happening.
to consider, and they're not going to go lose that many games.
Well, y'all also, I mean, you have some linebackers behind them that I think you got to be excited about when you have Kobe McKenzie.
That's the other
you have
problem.
Kip
is
Lewis.
linebacker
I'm really excited about for y'all is Kip Lewis. I think he
Lewis
adding
Carter.
on, Lewis Carter,
Samuel Moshigo, Phil Picciotti, Connor Neer. Like the other problem is this linebacker room for Oklahoma
Picciotti.
is just so deep that like I don't know if anybody really wants to come in here right now and compete because there's already guys that have been in the system for a year. Unless you're coming in for the cheetah role.
Which we'll see. I think McCullough's going to get that locked up as he's getting the experience that's needed to be able to be good at it.
I will
That's
say
the
this,
thing
though.
about McCullough. It's just taking time.
Reps.
It's a new role. He's used to being an edge rusher. They try not to use him as much in coverage. He's still learning. This is only his second actual game in the role. And he only played, 4 snaps the first game until he got hurt?
Yeah, I will say this. Someone up here put up about Danny Stutzman and Anthony Hill, and Nino's Corner actually asked about Texas specifically and, who's the best position group so far this season. And I asked, can we say Anthony Hill Jr.? Because as a true freshman, the dude's putting up numbers. I think he's got 2 sacks in the season, 16 total tackles, and 12 solo tackles. He's literally been one of the answers that Texas has needed on that defense. So Anthony Hill is going to be a problem for Texas over the next couple of years.
I'm here for all the Anthony Hill praise. Right, I don't think it needs to come at the expense of any player, but I'm here for all the Anthony Hill praise. He's going to be a problem. But if you saw his high school film, you knew.
If I had to build a program right now out of Danny Stutzman or Anthony Hill, I'm taking Anthony Hill. Even though Danny Stutzman's playing better, I'd take Anthony Hill.
Well, look,
Anthony
I don't
Hill's
think
absurd.
that
He's a freshman.
He's a freshman. He's an unbelievable, just so damn good.
Ty knows how I feel about freshmen playing early, but some players you can't keep off the field, and Anthony Hill's one of them, just like Peyton Bowman.
Well, I mean, Peyton. Yeah, I was about to say you
got to find a way to get them in. You may not give them 80 snaps, but you got to get them 50. I don't know how you do it, but you find it. You dig deep in that bowl, and you find a way. You know what? That's 50 snaps. We're gonna give it to them, and I don't care if you got to put 12 players on the field. You put them on the field. You give them snaps.
People are dissing my Missouri take in here now.
They don't like your Missouri take, but they are wishing me a banana split from Brahms. I'm going to hop out of here. I need to go eat dinner. Y'all be easy. Enjoy your Monday night football. We'll be back with Through the Haze tomorrow in the morning. And, you already know what it is. Before we let you out of here, though, y'all already know the drill. You got to plug up your channels. PG, we'll start with you.
Yeah, PG Show, YouTube, Apple, Google, Spotify. Go follow over there. I think actually, OU fans, we're actually having Legend Bay on the podcast tonight. We're going to talk about the season for Oklahoma from a recruit standpoint, and then he's also going to recap his unofficial visit that he had earlier this season. So you guys want to stay tuned for that. And also, I know he's got 15,000 views on the video already. If you haven't, go check out Daniel Akinkumi's video on his OV. If you want to know what an OV is like, go watch his video because he vlogged the whole thing.
Yeah, you sent that one to me. That's a good one. Jay, talk to me.
You know where to find me. Jay Smith, Unfair Sports. Just pull up. We're doing things. We're just continuing to pump out content. And you can find us also wherever podcasts download and listen to. Ty, as usual, thank you for having me. I love hanging out at my second home. Hopefully you will now replace my toothbrush, please.
I got a spare one, man. I don't
want your spare. I want mine. I want you to get me another one. And
I got you one. I got you one. Right?
Okay.
I got one. I know.
Yeah, please replace my toothbrush.
I messed up. I'm sorry.
Throwing away my toothbrush.
We'll see y'all next time. That's it. Peace.